Hey there, Wolfpack fans. It's me again, Kenton Gibbs, bringing you another episode of Locked On Wolfpack. And folks, the college football season is officially over. It's done. There's no more football to be played. The national championship is over. And boy, was that blowout just a terrible thing to watch. None of us wanted to see that, but we had to watch it. We had to witness it nonetheless. However, today we're going to be talking about some blasphemous statements said by Georgia fans because, we generally like to allow people to live and let live on this show, but it's getting out of hand. Some people are saying some things that are they make you want to scratch your head. They make you want to throw up a little bit. You talk about guys getting the job done, and folks are just saying things that just make you say, I don't know what job you're on, but please stop it. I don't know what drugs you're on, but please stop it. I don't know what you got going on, but please stop it. But one thing that you never stop is using LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is this episode today is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and for free, posting your job at linkedinjobs.com. So stick around. We're going to talk all things Stetson Bennett, all things national championship, all things college football recruiting, and more on today's episode of Locked On Wolfpack.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Now, as always, I got my main man Grayson Boone with me in the building, and we've got to talk some football today because there are other teams who wear red and white who were a little bit more fortunate this year than we were. A little healthier. Their players need their belt loops are a little further apart than ours, and so they came away with a national championship, back-to-back champs. Shout out to the University of Georgia and all the great things that Kirby Smart and the gang, or Stetson Bennett and the gang apparently, is doing over there. But we've got to talk about one of the most interesting quotes to come out of this national championship win, and it came from a fellow Locked On podcast host. So these are from the folks of the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. So stick with us. We're going to go through this quote. Actually, you know what? We'll go through the quote a little later. But let me just ask you this: have you ever seen a championship game be that bad of a blowout? Have you ever seen anything like that before?
The only college football championship blowout I kind of recollected on was when Alabama beat the brakes off of Notre Dame. This is probably 2011, 2012.
Yeah, that was when Mantateo was there. Yeah,
That's right. That's right. That's the last one that seemed that kind of got really out of hand, but I have never seen a beatdown like that in any kind of championship, to be quite honest with you. I mean, 65-7 on the biggest stage that college football has to offer was astounding. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of people can resonate, but I was in the TCU camp of things. I'd much rather prefer them to pull that out. They turned out to be a great story with Max Duggan taking over the reins in game one, and they got the Hypnotoad, whatever the heck that was. They became a great story, so I was rooting for TCU. I'm glad I was not a TCU fan because holy Moses, I can't even imagine like traveling to be at that game. What a nightmare.
That game. I had thought that the high school team I played for, we won the first Division I state championship in the history of the city of Detroit, and I thought we put it on the boys at Catholic Central bad. Novi Catholic Central, because of course they need to stop calling themselves Detroit Catholic. You're not in Detroit. Stop it. But anyway, I thought we put it on them bad, and it was like, I want to say 36-15 or something like that. It was we controlled that game throughout, and they got a couple touchdowns late to like kind of make it look closer than it was. But Jesus Christ, they let up nothing. They gave TCU nothing, and TCU had to take it and walk away. Man, I'll tell you what, that blowout has folks delusional. Okay, it has folks a little delusional. And it produced one of the most interesting quotes that you're going to hear. So Wolfpack fans, prepare your ears because this type of blasphemy, it doesn't happen often. Actually, in today's hot take society, it actually does happen often. And at this point in time, I'm ready to say take away all the podcast mics, include mine and Grayson's. Take them all away. Take it. Wrap it up. I love my blue snowball. I love my microphone back here. I love my mic. I love them. I love to hear myself talk, but we may need to take all of the microphones away after you hear this one.
To say is not hyperbole.
Dead serious.
100% dead serious. And so let me state it for the record. Stetson Bennett is the greatest NCAA quarterback to ever have played the game.
Tim Tebow would give both kidneys and die to be able to have done what Stetson Bennett has done as a college athlete. Do you understand what I'm saying? Who holds the record for most touchdowns accounted for in a championship game?
His name's Stetson Bennett.
Oh, it's Stetson Bennett tied with Joe Burrow. How many championships did Joe Burrow win? Just the one. And so if you go total touchdowns accounted for in championship games, where you're going to get a lot more than that.
But what if I was to tell you, Daniel, that in every single college football playoff stage, Stetson Bennett came away with the offensive MVP?
What if I was to tell you they led the team to 65 points? They scored on every possession except one.
Every word.
Folks, I'm all for people loving on their players and loving on their guys. I'm all for it. I'm a guy that love on Wolfpack guys. I'm a guy that was screaming and shouting like you never seen before when Nyheim Hines returned those 2 kick returns against the Bills to give the Patriots the win. I'm a guy that when Aleem McNeil got drafted, boy, I tell you what, I was rarely ever as excited for a Lions 3rd round pick as I was for that Aleem McNeil draft pick. I'm gonna tell you, I'm that guy. But man, they on that same stuff that Aaron Rodgers was on, because this here is just. So we're gonna do this, Grayson. How many NC State quarterbacks can you name that you think, like overall in terms of playing the quarterback position, have been better than Stetson Bennett? How many would you say?
Right off the top, I'd go Phillip Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
I would go. I mean, these are the obvious ones. Russell Wilson.
Right.
Even though I don't know if NC State fans are still claiming him these days. We
We're
were riding hard from him. Then he started doing some weird stuff. So he might be from Wisconsin if you ask me now. But
listen, we still got to take him, even with the Broncos country let's ride, even with the terrible, just one of the worst years we've seen in quite some time from a superstar quarterback. We still got to claim it. It's still our guy. You know what I mean?
We'll take it. But yeah, let's see. I got Rivers. I got Wilson. I think Jacoby Brissett might have been a little bit more talented than Stetson Bennett. Kind of gets wishy-washy with the kind of teams that Brissett was on and the team you just saw Stetson Bennett with. I'd say Jacoby Brissett's a maybe. If you want to get real weird, I think Ben Finley could have won that game on Monday night, but that is neither here nor there. You hope that in a couple of years down the road you can put MJ Morris in that category. But I'd say for sure Rivers, Wilson, maybe Brissett, Ryan Finley, maybe. I mean,
I'm gonna give you a throwback here. I think Roman Gabriel could have won that game.
Oh, that's way back.
I think Roman Gabriel could have won that game. Okay,
that boy had a leather helmet on, man.
The helmets were soft when that man played football. Okay, and this is the problem again with the hot take thing culture to me. But even beyond that, sometimes we just got to kind of be honest with ourselves about quarterbacks and how much emphasis is put on them, right? So, for example, Patrick Mahomes was announced as the first team All-Pro quarterback in the NFL, which many people are signifying as him officially wrapping up the MVP race, because 14 of the last 15 NFL MVPs have been the quarterback who is first team All-Pro. So this is telling me that we are overvaluing the quarterback position in some major ways. And the NFL and college are a little different, because the worst NFL team can beat the best NFL team if the best NFL team has a bad day or one bad injury. The worst FBS team cannot beat Georgia if Georgia has one injury to one guy. That's just not the case. That's not how that works out in college. And so when I look at Stetson Bennett and all that he did, I look at it a lot like Trent Dilfer with the Baltimore Ravens, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that he is Trent, because Trent Dilfer, the Ravens won in spite of him. But the Georgia Bulldogs won with Stetson Bennett. They didn't win because of him. Florida, at times with Tim Tebow, a lot of people say that they won because of him. But if you really go back and watch those games, the Pouncey brothers, Percy Harvin, Riley Cooper, Spikes the Mike linebacker. You had who was on that defense? Joe Hayden was on that defense. Major Wright, I believe, was a safety on that defense. You had a team that was flatly. Janoris Jenkins was on that team as well. What am I doing? I'm missing players here. That was a team. Carlos Dunlap was on that defense. That was a team that was like, I mean, you're doing great things. Don't get me wrong, Tim. You're doing really, really good things. You're running this offense well, but I'm fairly certain anybody could get him there. Hence why Chris Leak got him there, I want to say a year or two before. But the reality is this. The quarterback position, it's a situation where, and we kind of saw it this year with NC State. We won 8 games with 4 different starting quarterbacks. Like, nobody would say that the MVP of this team was any quarterback. Like, it can't, you just can't. If you said that about this NC State team, I would tell you, go to the clinic, get some help. Stop doing whatever you're on. With that being said, Stetson Bennett being the greatest player ever, again, wins and losses are not QB stats. I'm sorry to tell y'all this, okay? They're not QB stats. It's a stat based upon the situation that you were placed in, and based upon that, you either get the good breaks or you don't. You end up in the team that has the ability to build around you. You end up in a team that has the ability to they're right on the cusp of winning. All they need is a good quarterback. And then you come along or you don't. But that's not something that you generally look at and say, oh man, good quarterbacks win, bad quarterbacks lose. Because if that's the case, again, somebody explain to me why Trent Dilfer has more Super Bowl rings than Dan Marino. Why is that a thing? Why Matt Stafford is a guy that I don't think he turned into a brand new quarterback when he went from Detroit to LA. I watched him. If anything, he got worse. He got a little worse than he was with the Lions. And yet he got a Super Bowl ring. So no shade, no hate to Stetson Bennett. You know what I mean? Shout out to the guy. If I ever live in Athens, Georgia at some point in time in life, I'll be sure to stop by Stetson Bennett Kia of Athens and go ahead and get me a Kia Soul or something like that from there. Because Lord knows, his LinkedIn, I'm sure it looks great with Heisman candidate on there and all that, but he's not going to be in the NFL. Let's just get that out of our heads now.
He's gonna hook you up with the keys to Kia Forte, though. I'll tell you.
There you go. He go. Hey, I'm gonna tell you what. Lifetime service.
He can complete that pass.
Lifetime free service. Okay, I'm gonna tell you what. It's a national championship service. Okay, at Stetson Bennett Kia of Athens. All right, I'm ready for it. I'm here for it. I'm in full support of it. But seriously, Stetson Bennett is a very good quarterback. I'll give him that. I'll give him very good. I'm not going to give him great, but again, I'm definitely not giving him the greatest quarterback in college football history because, there are other quarterbacks. Minnesota won 3 straight national championships from 34 to 36. Was the quarterback who was over those championships, should he be mentioned amongst the greats? Should he? No, it's just not how it works, folks. You win games sometimes because you have, I don't know, the number 1 pick in Trayvon Walker, a potential number 1 pick in Carter, the defensive lineman this year. I don't know, N'Kobe Dean. I don't know, Quay Walker. I don't know, Keely Ringo. When you got a bunch of guys that are going to be in the green room, generally you're looking at a good time as far as being a quarterback goes. So that's all I'm going to say there. Again, no hate to Stetson. No, you're disgusting and we think that you're terrible. None of that. Just Georgia fans, come on, man. Just celebrate your national championship like normal people, right?
Yeah, I get it. You just won back-to-back titles. I mean, if I were a Georgia fan, I'd probably be saying some stuff on the airways too. I can't fault them there. But this is a wild take considering, we just watched Joe Burrow. We just watched Lamar Jackson. We just watched Cam Newton in college. Well, not just, but Cam Newton was a better college quarterback than Stetson Bennett. You got Tim Tebow in the mix. You got maybe even Johnny Manziel was a better college quarterback.
I'll tell you one right down the road from Johnny Manziel that I think really was one of the worst sabotage cases in NFL history. Vince Young. Had it not been for Jeff Fisher and him butting heads, I think he would have went on to have, at worst, a perennial Pro Bowl career, like a 6-7 time Pro Bowl career. But they never quite set horses, and that's neither here nor there. But again,
just a wild take. Like Stetson Bennett wasn't even the best quarterback in the SEC this year. I'd have Hendon Hooker, then Bryce Young, maybe then Stetson Bennett.
Hello.
So like, congrats on your title. I would be delusional too, but I mean, come on, maybe drink some water, sit down, and think about what you just said, because he is not the greatest quarterback of all time in college. Come on.
And again, when you cherry pick stats like, oh, who had the most touchdowns in a playoff and who was the offensive player of the game and in every level of the playoffs, the offensive player of the game is the offensive MVP is going to be the player who wins the game and is probably the most important part of their team having a national championship or winning that game. That's what it's going to be. Okay. At the end of the day, he was the winner on that team, and Georgia didn't run the ball particularly well or like extremely well in terms of what they did against TCU. But let you in on another secret, okay? Again, the numbers can be misleading because, for example, you could say Stetson Bennett had more rushing touchdowns this year than Marcus Mariota had in the year before he won the Heisman. And sure, that's technically true. Absolutely. Marcus Mariota only had 9 touchdowns in his sophomore year. Stetson Bennett had 10 this year. The difference is Marcus Mariota had a lot more yards, had a lot more impact on that offense, had a lot more. You can't replace him with anybody, and he does that. You can't. The number of guys you replace him with was smaller than what you could replace Stetson Bennett with, and there's that on that. But anywho, enough of Georgia. We do have to talk the playoffs though going forward because playoff expansion is on the horizon. Some people are saying it's 2024. Some people are saying next year. We're not. We don't care about when it happens. Our question is going to be, how does that help or hurt NC State? Does it help them get the job done? So we'll talk about that right after we get back from this break. And speaking of getting the job done, let's talk about LinkedIn Jobs. Folks, LinkedIn Jobs is the place that you need to be in terms of hiring. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs is a place you have to check out. They can help you hire the qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your opening jobs with targeting tools, and they go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post and company and their 875 million members just to find out who is the best fit for you. So again, go to LinkedIn Jobs to find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job free. Terms and conditions do apply. Now, in talking about what Georgia has done here, right? I think one of the most important things to recognize is that Georgia was able to do it because I don't believe it's ever about your X's and your O's. I believe it's about your Larrys and your Joes. And, they just had better Larrys and Joes than everybody else. And with that being said, we're going to look at the NC State recruiting class. And, this is very similar to most other NC State recruiting classes in that we don't have a ton of really, really big names. Our highest rated recruit being Mr. Javonte Juice Vereen, who we had on this show, is a friend of the pod. But anyway, he's the only player that we had inside the ESPN 300 that's coming in. And we got the number 1 defensive end out of JUCO in Jakevius Hibbler, who I believe we talked about before. Kendrick Raphael, the number 24 running back in the nation. Damon Fagan, cousin of Cyrus Fagan, which, we had to discuss that before the show because we were like, wait a minute. Both with the last name Fagan, both from Florida, both above 6 feet and defensive backs. We know something. They're cousins. They're cousins, folks. Anywho, with that being said, again, lots of great talent here. Darian Rivers, an offensive tackle out of Charlotte. Zach Myers, receiver. Lex Thomas, of course, the third Thomas brother. It's always good to have that in there. Terrante Hidden, who, again, we talked about before. Rohan Davey, Kamen Smith, Kevin Concepcion, Isaiah Shirley, Kamal Bonner, Obadiah. I do not know how to pronounce this last name, but I'm going to go with Obadiah out of Alpharetta, Georgia. Brandon Seiss, the number 1 corner out of South Carolina. Kelvin McBride, and Rico Jackson. Now, in looking at this class, okay, what do you think in terms of looking at this class? Are you thinking there are many fans who would like to see us get a higher caliber of player and do more along those lines? What do you think when you look at this class? Are you thinking to yourself, you know what, we do need better players? This isn't going to cut it. Are you kind of like, hey, I trust them to develop them, and it's better to go after the guys that we can get than the guys that we can't? Where do you stand in terms of looking at a class like this?
I am okay with where we're at with this class. I think people get caught up in the ranking of it. Looking at it right now, I believe we're 39th overall for this next coming year.
Hmm.
But people, how soon we forget what NC State does? We develop our players. Don't get too caught up in what the ranking says right now in 39. That's not what it's going to turn out to be when it's all said and done. We have a proven track record of sending players to the NFL. Even the players that got sent to the NFL, their classes look a lot like this one, and they get them in the system, they coach them up, and they become that developed final piece. That being said, I am very excited about Juice Vereen. Shout out Juice. From what I have heard is every time he steps on the field, he is the best player on it. Anytime you get a player like that, bring him in. We need him. We'll find a spot for him. Obviously, yeah, you have the cousin of Cyrus. You have Damon Fagan coming in from Florida. 6'3" for a safety is pretty big. That's a big size safety. We're looking to fill the Tanner Ingle void, so we're hoping he can step in and become a taller Tanner Ingle, I guess, if you will. You do have the third Thomas brother coming through, Lex. That's a very cool story, kind of legacy of brothers coming through NC State. We'll see what he can do if he gets any playing time. Obviously, the elephant in the room there is he's going to be behind MJ Morris, we hope, for some time to come. And then another name I've been really focused on is Kendrick Raphael. Fire name alert. He sounds like the fifth Ninja Turtle, but he was that big flip we got from Iowa. They're pretty close to signing day deadline, but I've heard very good things about him. Explosive back, and like you said, he's one of the top ranked in the country. So I'm pretty pleased with how we turned out, and I'm very excited to see how we progress moving forward.
My biggest thing about it is this: we historically, our best classes, or the classes or the guys that have meant the most, have had a lot of stars by their name, right? Peyton Wilson, 4-star, Lee McNeil, 4-star, Devin Leary, 4-star. Sure, absolutely. But with that being said, I mean, you can't move past, you can't move beyond the fact that at the end of the day, we are a player development team. That's part of who we are. But even still, I get the argument of wanting more, because when you look at again, these, I say it all the time, recruiting sites are not all that there is. They're not infallible, perfect sites where every player they rank at a certain spot, that's exactly what they are or not. It's not the case. Doesn't work out that way, right? But with that being said, they don't get it wrong all the time. If every player that you get that's a high caliber player out of high school turns out to be nothing for your program. I'm looking at a school that can't fill their football stadium, and its basketball team is struggling right now. If every player you get that's a 4 or 5-star turns out to not pan out, look within, brother. Look within. That's on you. There's something you're doing wrong there with in terms of your recruiting. Now, I will say this: there is a difference between going after players that like have a high caliber and players that we can get. But I think that we can get players with a high caliber. I think that if we truly are like fully, you know what, we need to know how interested is this kid beyond like, oh, this is another offer to have, this is another notch on the belt. How likely are we to land this kid for some of these really high ranking players out of North Carolina? At the moment, they're being picked off by Clemson, they're being picked off by Bama, they're being picked off by Georgia. We got to keep some of these top kids in the state, and we got to get some of these top kids in red and white. That to me would just be a massive deal here, because North Carolina is not a state that's devoid of talent, right? Like, it's not like, no offense to this state, they just don't have the population. Not like we're at Wyoming. Like, it's not like that. It's not where it's like, oh, you only got about 300,000 kids graduate from college every year, and like, oh, well, I mean, graduate from high school every year, and like, oh, if those 300,000, only X amount play football. Of those that play football, only X amount are good. This is North Carolina. We got multiple cities of like 1 million people. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Or of multiple hundreds to thousands of people. We need to be able to do enough to get in some really top talent here and stop letting them get snatched up by those other places. So I'm more so on the side of like, yes, we develop players, but what if we develop good players? Huh? Think about
That's
that.
what I'm saying. Yeah.
Think about
Because,
that.
like, in all reality, are we gonna? I don't want to say outbid, but that's kind of how it feels with NIL now.
Yeah.
Are we gonna outbid the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Oregons for specific players? Probably not.
And this is where I say that the on the field matters a lot, because at the end
Exactly.
of the day, it's hard to beat those teams out when you don't have at least a conference championship to show. At least a conference championship to say, hey man, you come here and we have a history of winning this thing. We are right there on the precipice of a national championship. We need you to be the piece to get us over. It's a different selling point than we're right there on the precipice of getting to a conference championship. You're the piece to get us over. It's a very different thing. It's a very different thing because kids can see these guys aren't, excuse me, these guys aren't stupid. A lot of them have family in their ear, have folks who've been through it in their ear, well, not folks who've been through it, but folks who watch sports and all that in their ear saying, hey, you go to Georgia, you see what they did. You see what they're doing. You go to Bama, you see what Saban's done. You go to, whatever play, you see what Clemson's doing. Again, if you win it, they will come. I'm not a believer in if you build it, they'll come. If you win it, if you start filling up folks' folks' hands with rings, if you start doing that, all of a sudden, when folks start getting fistful of rings, you'll start seeing it won't be as much of a problem to get those top players. And I know everybody said, oh, well, NC State's always just been middle of the road. There was a time where Clemson wasn't Clemson. Like what we know today. There was a time where they weren't that. They were not that. So what's the major difference there? What's this grand chasm that one would purport as, not being or as being an extremely different situation? Almost every team in the nation, as far as Power Five, at one point in time or another, has been much better or much worse than what they are right now. So, like, why can't it be us? Why can't it be us to go on to do all those great things and win in terms of national championship and all that good stuff? I'm not saying I'm betting on it to happen next year, but I'm just saying there's no reason why we can't win ourselves a conference championship and get to a place where we are getting those players. And if you're a bettor, make sure that you go to betonline.net. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest place to get all of your sports betting needs taken care of. Trust and believe me when I tell you this, you can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football to basketball season to anything that you would want, we've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. They're the fastest and easiest way to get your sports betting info. So head to the website today to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we're about to land this thing, but I think in closing, Georgia fans, maybe relax a little bit. Stetson's good, but maybe just take it down a little. Take it down a little. And before we get out of here, let me ask you this: do you think that the expansion of the playoffs helps or hurts NC State?
I think the obvious answer would be helps because we could potentially get in it. We have to do a lot of work to get there, but I was a long proponent of the CFP expanding to 8 teams. I think that would have been the number to hit. Them moving to 12, I think that opens the door just a little bit wider for NC State to maybe squeak in there one of these years. But I mean, yeah, like how cool would that to be? Now, if we're number 12 per se, we're going to have to see a Georgia or an Alabama, but how cool would that to be seeing NC State in the college football playoff per se? That is something that would also help with recruiting. You want the big players, you got to play on the big stage so they can see you. Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that it'd be super cool to see the NC State in the Fiesta Bowl or probably not with the ACC limitations, but the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, something like that. And it's feasible. I mean, you saw our team got ranked up as high as 10 this year. We have the capability to get up in that range. It's just staying in that range has kind of eluded us. But yeah, I'm very excited to see the expansion, how this works. Unfortunately you might get the 65 to 7s in the early rounds, but you might not. You might get a 12 seeded BYU come in and knock off an Alabama. That would be unbelievable for the sport of college football. It could be NC State one of these years. You never know.
I'm going to tell you this, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart and soul. I don't understand how anybody could be against this. I had always been a proponent from the jump. And anybody who's listening to me on Facts Over Acts or anywhere, or I believe I said it here as well in the previous episode, I believe it should be 12, but I believe the structure should be different. I think every conference champ that's ranked inside the RPI top 35 should get, or top 50 rather, because 35, 45 should be in it. And any conference champion that is outside of that, they lose their spot to an at-large bid. And then, of course, you get 2 wild card teams per se. But that's not how it's going to shake out here, because obviously the Power 5 is not just going to have 7 spots in a given year and just be okay with that. With that being said, I think that this definitely, I agree. It helps NC State. But again, NC State has to help itself. Divisions are gone. State fans have long complained about, how did we end up on the side with Clemson and Florida State, and all these teams are bad. Miami's bad, and Virginia Tech's bad, and all these teams are bad. And if we were over there, well, the divisions are gone now. There is no excuse. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is put up or shut up time. If Doran has it in him to get it done, it has to happen. Now, again, at some point in time, it has to happen, period. It has to happen, or else at some point in time, we have to accept that this is a mediocre coach. We are a mediocre program that will never get any more than what we are now. And that's the reality of that. So thank you so much for coming out, Grayson. Thank you, Wolfpack Nation, for coming out to listen. We appreciate y'all every single time y'all make this show what it is. And again, if you think Stetson Bennett is the greatest college football quarterback to do it, get off that stuff. It's bad for you. It's rotting your brain. I'm gonna tell you what, it's. I worked at a news station for a very long time, and we don't even cover overdoses. You end up in obituaries, and that's it. All right, so stop it.
Go outside and touch some grass.
Touch some grass. There we go. Get some sunlight. Touch some grass. Peace and love, y'all. And as always, go Pack.
Go Pack.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.